welcome to My Career in Data, a podcast where we discuss with industry leaders and experts how they have built their careers. I'm your host, Shannon Kemp, and today we're talking to Ari Leeds from LeedsSource.
With a robust catalog of courses offered on demand and industry-leading live online sessions throughout the year, the Dataversity Training Center is your launchpad for career success. Browse the complete catalog at training.dataversity.net and use code DVTalks for 20% off your purchase.
Hello and welcome. My name is Shannon Kemp and I'm the Chief Digital Officer at Dataversity, and this is My Career in Data, a Dataversity Talks podcast dedicated to learning from those who have careers in data management, to understand how they got there, and to be talking with people who help make those careers a little bit easier. To keep up to date in the latest in data management education, go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Today, we're joined by Ari Leeds, the founder and CEO at LeedsSource. And normally this is where a podcast host would read a short bio of the guest. But in this podcast, your bio is what we're here to talk about. Ari, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you.
I'm so glad you could join us today. So tell me, so you're the founder and CEO at LeedsSource. So tell me about LeedsSource.
Yeah, so we're primarily a professional services company specializing in custom Salesforce.com build outs, business automation, helping people take products to market on the Salesforce platform, and doing some administrative and maintenance as well, support type things. And we also have a product on the side that we build as well.
Oh, what's that product?
It's called Permatrix. It's on the Salesforce App Exchange. It's currently free, and it's to help system administrators and security-minded people, CISOs, those types of folks, getting a handle and visibility into the permissions and the deep permissions setup in Salesforce. It can be pretty complex, and we're trying to help people who have compliance and security in mind, make their job, trying to make their lives easier, basically. Do things in clicks instead of hours.
Oh, I love that. I love efficiency. Well, and just in case there's somebody out there listening who doesn't know what Salesforce is, can you tell me what Salesforce is?
Yeah, so Salesforce is the biggest CRM platform. It does extend beyond CRM, customer relationship management, but it's that's where it started, and that's where all of its core capabilities really are. And it's more than just a piece of software. It's in the cloud, so it's online, but it's also a development platform. So we can build all kinds of applications and business systems on top of it. And you know how you might get QuickBooks or Excel, or you have these other applications that you're used to, and these are more canned pieces of software. Salesforce is more like a box of Legos. It's a kit essentially. Yeah. So you got all these parts, and you can kind of build your business operations on top of it.
Oh, very cool. So tell me, as the founder, why did you choose to start this company, and what are your responsibilities in your day-to-day week?
Yeah, so I started the company in October of 2019. I had been in a number of different positions between software development, consulting, product management. I had always wanted to start a business. I wasn't, Salesforce was a common thread, that technology stack was a common thread in a lot of my jobs. And I had been a consultant in it about 10 years earlier. I'd worked for a consultancy. So I had some good experience there. Always really liked the platform and what they did. And I took the little bits of experience that I got in my different career, my different jobs, my different titles, and decided that we would get started by going back into the Salesforce world and into the services side, step away from product, and try to apply some of that knowledge that I gained through those different lenses of being in product and development and management, et cetera.
Oh.
My responsibilities now are much different than they've ever been. I'm I'm the head janitor. I am the lead developer. Um, I'm the accountant, HR. So it's a small company, a lot of hats, as they say. But it's very true. Tonight I'll be washing dishes and getting the office ready for the weekend. So it varies quite a bit minute to minute.
Nice. Um, and so you started in 2019.
Yeah.
And so it's just a year before COVID.
Yeah, it was the end of 2019 as
Oh,
well. So it was
yeah.
very soon before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was that building? I'm just curious, how building a company, while suddenly you're being locked down, especially a consulting company.
hmm
How did you navigate through that challenging time?
Um, it was definitely scary at first because it was just at the very beginning of COVID. It was just me and one of my first employee, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. Um, Especially when it got very real and I started shipping his equipment out to him. He wasn't coming into the office anymore,
Yeah.
and I remember dropping his monitor off, and I left it on the sidewalk so we wouldn't touch each other or be near each other, and then he came out and picked it up. It was definitely a strange experience, but the reality was the nature of our business. We did just fine, especially that 2020. We really did find a lot of companies, their needs and what they were doing with technology very often were actually increasing.
Hmm.
So we actually did quite well at first, and yeah, it didn't really hurt us. It was tough to be away from everybody, but
Sure.
there was kind of this thirst for technology once COVID came around. And it wasn't really till 2022 where we started kind of seeing that, that backslide away
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah, and we've seen the same thing, and but that's great. That's really amazing. That's because so much of consultancy, I imagine, is that interaction with people.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we definitely used to do a lot more, or I used to do a lot more travel on site, but it's just,
Yeah,
you know, it's a Zoom call away at this point, and people are
yeah,
saying, why take a 6-hour train or a flight or a drive when we could, sum this up in 45 minutes on camera.
right. Yeah, yeah. I understand. I've been saying, one of the pros of what the challenge that we went through in dealing with the pandemic is I no longer have to explain how I work from home. It's,
That's true. Yeah.
we've been a virtual company for a while. So tell me, okay, so all right, when you were very, very young, say 5, 6 years old, was this the dream? What did you say? When I grow up, I am going to found a company.
Well, I think, you know, aspects of it might be the dream. Yeah, maybe having my own company, sure. I don't know if I thought in those terms maybe a 5 or 6, but I think I like the idea of having something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a kid, always wanted to be an architect.
Oh, uh-huh.
And that carried me probably through high school. And I did do a semester to 2 semesters of architecture school. And I said, oh, this isn't exactly what I thought I wanted.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so I would say, there's pieces of it that are I imagined, but it's not it's not as it's not the picture that was painted in my head, that long ago.
yeah. So what evolved then? So you're like, oh, this isn't for me.
What with the architecture dream?
Yeah, yeah. So the romance has worn off.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I liked drawing and I liked math and science.
Mhm.
And I did a lot of in high school, I did a lot of like tech voc, architectural drafting, things like that, drawing, blueprints. I did a lot of it, even as jobs on the side. I was good at it, using AutoCAD, SolidWorks, and doing computer-aided design, things like that. And when I got to college, it was a lot of art history, which didn't really do it for me. A lot of I'd say like certain types of theory courses that weren't really tickling my fancy. I wanted more of the what about the structure? How do we analyze structures, and how do we design? And I think all that would have come, but I was really, I guess, wanted more instant gratification, maybe, or more hands-on, more science, more math.
Mhm.
And it was very much go sit in the Boston Public Library and write this huge, essay on, what was going through the designer's head when, they decided to put this courtyard together. And I was just like, what am I? This is not what I want to be doing. So it didn't end up being for me. And
Yeah.
I ended up switching to mechanical engineering, which was right up my alley.
Oh, okay.
And that transitioned when I had my first job. I loved the classes. And then when I had my first job, I said, I could probably automate some of this stuff. There's a lot of formulas and equations. And that's when I started actually putting my hands on code. I said, I can make things happen really, really fast. It's very gratifying. And I kind of haven't looked back. I've been in software ever since. And that was probably, 2000, oh man, 2009 or something like that. Yeah.
Very nice. So a couple of things I take away from that is, one, you listened to yourself and went, okay, this doesn't fit, which is very commendable, but and to know yourself and not force something, and then find something that you really did fit you, and you could be really, really passionate about. And that I love that. So tell me a bit about the discovery into code. I mean, it sounds like too, additionally, that you are a problem solver. So I see a big problem here. I think this can be done better. How did you discover those things? Is it just from doing it and repeating and finding ways to make it more efficient for yourself, or is it talking to others?
I, I think so. For one, it was definitely curiosity, and I kind of think I get into these little holes where I block the rest of the world out. There's, I forget what my task was, especially when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I say, yeah, you told me to do that, but I'm gonna figure this out. We'll get to that and we'll solve that, but we're gonna figure out a different way than what you told me. And I've also usually been really good at learning by myself versus learning from being taught. I was very good at independent learning. Sitting in school and listening to somebody speak didn't always work out, but if I had time, if I really enjoyed the subject matter, and I put it right in front of me and get my hands on it, I kind of would, maybe obsess a little bit about it. And so the same thing happened here. I just, said, gee, I'm coming up with all this stuff. There's all these moving parts.
Right.
I was always very good with technology to begin with. So computers weren't not like new to me at all. But I started it by writing like macros in Excel. I don't know if anybody's familiar, but automating spreadsheets was like the first step really into this world. And then it just kind of kept opening up and opening up. And I ended up at this little, what was at the time a small software company in Brookline, Massachusetts. And, we were sleeping on the couch at night, working 90-hour weeks, staying at the office all day, all night. It was where I kind of got my I call it my honorary degree maybe in software development. I could
Huh.
really, they encouraged you to get into your hole and your zone,
Yeah.
and there was just other people like that there.
Oh, that's very nice. So it wasn't just a matter of finding things that you like, but in a culture that really worked for you as well.
Yeah, I I don't feel like I was so consciously seeking it out.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't want to take too much credit for like,
Yeah.
knowing exactly what I want and getting it. It was
Yeah.
more going with the flow, I'd say. It's like, huh, this is interesting. Let's pivot over here. Let's, move over there. And yeah, it's worked out.
It sounds like it. So tell me though, then a little bit about the progression of your career. So you go from coding and really learning to code, and what's next? Where did you go after that job?
Yeah, so after that one, and that taught me all about code and databases, and we were building, big business systems, so it wasn't cute little apps. It was pretty heavy stuff. Um, but that's when I went to my first Salesforce consulting company.
Mm, mhm.
Um, and I said, well, at the time I had a little bit of a reality snap. I had my first child at the time, and I couldn't be doing these, stay on the couch all night at work anymore type of deals.
Right.
I had to get a little bit more of a solid job. So I got a job with my first Salesforce consultancy as basically a developer. I came in
Mhm.
to write custom code on the platform for their clients, write a bunch of automation. And it was kind of easy at first. I mean, I was building software from scratch. Now I had a platform. It's like I said, it's a Lego kit. Imagine, you don't have a Lego kit and somebody says, build me a castle made out of Legos, but you don't get any Legos. You have to build the Legos first.
Oh
Now
yeah.
I get, right? Like you have to get the plastic and mold it and all that.
Mhm.
Now I got this kit. I'm like, wow, I can do a lot with this. This is like a Salesforce thing. It's like a toy. Um, and it just became really fun, and I got to know the platform very, very well. And I stayed there for maybe 2.5, 3 years,
Mhm.
and worked my way up, and was running my own projects and clients after not too much time. So that kind of got me into um, a little more exposed to client facing work, project management, um, things like that. And uh, and then there were transition after that. That took me to product management,
Mm,
and
mhm.
we were building a cloud cybersecurity product. And they, this company had covered the Google platform really well, and they were trying to cover Salesforce, and they were trying, they tried to do something, and they didn't have too many experts in house, so they brought me in as a Salesforce expert to run the Salesforce product. So now I'm building products that are integrating with Salesforce. So it's kind of a different angle, and we're
Mhm.
taking products to market. So it's a different skill set. Um, Doing marketing and sales, working with marketing and sales. I wasn't doing marketing and sales. Um, but yeah, I kind of mixing technology and management
Mhm.
with taking products to market and learning how product management is separate from project management. Um, and that was a really, really great experience. I don't think I could do what I'm doing now actually without that second one, because
Mm.
you learn to think more about the top down. So as a developer, you're thinking about the bottom up a lot with you can imagine what I could do with all these things. I could write code that does this, and this. Um, in product management, you're thinking about what's the problem that a person or a market or segment has, and how and thinking deeply about problems before jumping right into solutions,
Right.
and thinking about what are the business needs, what are the human needs before what are the technological needs. So that was a really um, critical job, and they ended up getting bought out by Cisco, so I worked there for a small period too. But those were probably the really big critical steps. I don't know if you want me to just keep going or what.
Yeah. No, this is really interesting. I love this. I love this path. And yeah, so, how did you, get, and where did you go to get to where you are now with building your company?
Yeah, so there was one. I'd say actually there was probably one more critical job after
Yeah.
those. I became. I was kind of getting, say bored. Let's say bored with Cisco. We got bought out. We were acquired. Your job was a little bit more floaty, and I'm used to
Mhm.
touching stuff and doing stuff. And
Yeah.
I said, all right, I gotta get back to that. I ended up going to work for an energy company as CTO. So it was my first executive experience.
Hmm.
And I'd probably say getting that executive experience was, sitting on the next to the CEO, that was really good. Seeing how to really oversee people in a different way, really look from the company's perspectives, really look at the very forward-looking strategic stuff. Um, so yeah, that was one more experience. I did have one other job in the middle, but it was kind of like, I'm going to try this, and that was really. I don't want to say I picked up anything too new there. It was another product management job where I said, I got to get back to the software world. I've been in energy for the last couple of years. I really miss like big software world. And I got into it, and in less than a year, I said, nope, I made a mistake. This is my cue. This is like, it's time to start the business. I picked up all the nuggets that I wanted to pick up. This last one, I'm not picking anything up here. I'm going to jump and finally make the call. And I called up a couple
Hmm.
former clients, and I said, if I am available, like, you know, a lot, would you guys, use me exclusively
Yeah.
for your Salesforce needs? And I got two yeses. And I said, good enough for me. That's enough for 40 hours plus a week of work. Let's do this. So I launched it, and I
Oh,
learned all the legalities and all the I started learning very fast all the things that I didn't know I didn't know.
right. Oh,
Yes.
as you do when starting a small company. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations. It's a brave thing that you did. And that's amazing. I love that.
It
So
doesn't feel brave, but that's what people
uh,
say. It's
oh, it is truly. And I do, and it's just a great story of problem solving and following your passion, which is great.
Visit dataversity.net and expand your knowledge with thousands of articles and blogs written by industry experts, plus free live and on-demand webinars covering the complete data management spectrum. While you're there, subscribe to the weekly newsletter so you'll never miss a beat.
So tell me, so as you were transitioning through all those things, what was your biggest lesson in your career that you still use today?
um this probably in my whole career,
Hmm.
um I would say it's probably a little cliche, but I would say it's the failures that really shape you more than the successes. I know that's probably, everybody's favorite LinkedIn meme or whatever these days, but you see that all over the place. But it really is true. There's definitely so many. It's like, it's like touching a hot stove. Oh, nope, not doing that again. I know what that does now. Um, just there's so many things that helped me say, you know what, for now on, I'm going to create a framework for this type of problem so that this type of outcome doesn't happen again. So there's a lot of those failures, I would say, um, that that are probably my biggest lesson is probably to accept those failures, and while I'm in the moment realize I'm having, not to get too upset at where I am, and just remember that it's a point in time, that's something I'm going to look back at that's going to form something else in the future. So it's probably accepting the failures along the way is the best lesson.
I don't think that's cliche at all. I think that's such an important thing to drive home for people, because it takes so long, right? Because especially when you're in the moment, like you talk about, when you're in that moment of something not going right, it's so
Yeah.
hard, and so many people are trained to perfection, right? Failure is such a negative, horrible, awful thing, but but it is a lesson, right? It is
Yes.
to take away from. And so do you use that? So do you use that in your, current job, just like your current, in the company, like, hey, does it make you afraid to try new things, or does it make you more bold to try new things?
I um I think I first of all definitely use it. There's an element that's harder now where I have, a list of clients who are depending on me and I don't want to let them down. So
Sure.
I'm more afraid of letting others down now than I am
Yeah.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in that respect, it's sometimes harder. And also as the business owner, one thing I've had to learn is to measure and balance risk and say, I'd like to do that. I don't know if that's going to work out so well for my employees though.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a little bit more balance that comes into play, risk management, thinking about finances, things like that.
Sure.
So I would say, in terms of operations, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very open to failure in certain ways. Like, hey, let's try to do something different and see what the outcome is. More, I would say, more experimental, and being willing for that experiment to fail. Um, but there is definitely, yeah, a lot more measurement probably that happens now. But even when things do go bad with a client or something, I am still trying to remind myself the point in time, you know, this is only going to make things better going forwards. Try to get some sleep tonight if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that for
Yeah.
sure. And you mentioned measurement, which is really a really nice segue into data. I imagine you work a lot with data in as a founder and CEO, and so how do you use data currently in your job?
Um, well, probably probably over 90% of the time I'm touching other people's data, my
Mhm.
customers' data. We're helping them with their data.
Sure.
Um, and then, I've got my own data, and I probably am really not, I don't know if I should say this, but I'm probably not great at practicing what I preach on certain things because I'm usually pretty consumed with making sure the customer is taken care of and that their data is right. Um, Mine's pretty good. I've got some good systems in place. But there's things that I'm like, if I saw this in my customer's environment, I would have them fix all this. But but there's definitely a few of those things. But it's there's so many uses for it, and there's data, there's metadata, which is the data that describes the data or the containers of the data. Um, and the way I'm using it, and there's lots of ways because there's data, there's data for science, there's data for business. We're usually trying to give executives data that or present them data that gives them the levers um, for their business so that they can say, this isn't, you know, this looks like this, therefore I can pull this lever to improve something over here. So we're trying to give them the information they need to make good high level, strategic business decisions, steering the ship, not like, you know, minuscule day-to-day stuff.
Sure.
However, that comes from the minuscule day-to-day stuff. It's an aggregation of all the tiny bits and granular pieces of data that roll up from what their company actually does. Somebody makes a phone call. Is that logged as data? An email, an action, somebody places an order, um, somebody closes a deal. These are all, everything's generating data. And so we're constantly trying to make make sense of it, make sure it's structured in a way that makes sense of itself naturally, and put systems around it that, that hopefully aggregate it and make sense at a business level. You take, millions and millions of records and try to boil them down into, a pie chart or a gauge or something.
Mhm.
And that's what we're doing all the time. And yeah, I have to remind myself to do it for myself sometimes too. There are certain things I depend on constantly for my business, like time tracking. As a consultancy, it's very heavy on time tracking.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, lots and lots of, I'd say it's like we're just building pyramids, and the deeper you go, the finer the bits are. And then you're building up to these things where people can make big business decisions.
I can relate. We laugh here, at Dataversity, the irony of what we do is, practicing what we preach, right? It's so
Yes.
hard, you're so working so hard for the consumer, and you gotta take time
Yes.
to, manage your own data.
Yeah,
I get
100%. And I'm
it.
looking forward to the day. I think there's a point where my company's big enough where we
Right.
can start like, there's a whole area that covers just making sure this stuff's really good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so what is your definition of data then?
um, so it's really a collection of information that's useful for describing something. Data is really the plural, right? It's datum for, is only one little nugget of data.
Mhm.
So when I think of data, I always kind of think of it in the plural. It has to have attributes for it to be useful. I tell you the number 5 is data, but it really isn't until it's there has to be metadata for it to be useful. 5 what? What's your unit of measure? Let's start there.
Right.
And what is it for? So data, I think, is it's the it's the information without the context, and then useful data really has to have the context, which is really the metadata or other types of contextual placement of it. Um, I don't know if that really defines data, but
It
it's got to
does.
consist of some kind of type. It's got to be, a number, a word, binary information. It's information that needs context to make sense. Hopefully, it has that. Otherwise, it's basically useless.
Indeed, it's
Yeah.
very, very true. And that's a very good definition. Absolutely. So, because you're absolutely right. Data in context. So, and now working with a lot of data, especially now you're working with customers who have a lot of data. Do you see the importance of data management and the number of jobs working with data increasing or decreasing over the next 10 years, and why?
Hmm. So it should increase, but there's one really big variable question mark out there called AI.
Mhm.
So putting that aside, it should increase. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see too often companies that generate loads of data that don't have that where nobody's actually responsible for it.
Mm.
And it's kind of dangerous, actually. There's because it's open to interpretation.
Right.
Lots of data is open to interpretation. So there has to be the number of jobs should surely increase. I think, companies that value their data and their operations, because now data is driving operations. Paperwork is basically gone from a lot of industries, not everywhere, but paperwork's pretty limited.
Mhm.
And you've got all this digital content of data is primarily digital, and it's it has to be put into the right hands at the right time under the right circumstances with the context, and it takes somebody to manage that data for all that to happen. You can't just have a giant bucket of data, let's say, to
Right.
oversimplify it, and you've got everybody from every department dipping their spoons into it and pulling from it. They don't really know what to make of it, or they might think they know what to make of it, but it really was something that wasn't meant for them. And I don't really mean in a privacy way. I mean in a purely contextual way. It's so you have to have it. It's got to be on the right conveyor belts. It's got to have the right context. It's got to be in the right packaging, and it's going to take it takes work to do that. Whether it's automation or people, there ultimately has to be human beings responsible, and there's backup, and there's just so many things that revolve around it. It's the fuel for everything.
Yeah, I think you're so right. There's so many points where it does need to be managed by people. And I would even argue, that AI, what goes into AI, the data that goes into AI, and managing what it produces, also needs to be managed.
There has to be somebody outside of that world that can
Mhm.
that can be ultimately responsible for it. It has to come from outside.
Yeah, absolutely. So what advice then would you give to people who are looking to get into a career in data in some aspect? There's so many, but whatever you choose.
I think it's understanding if they're going into a career in data management. I think the use of the data would probably be important. Are you is it for research? Are you collecting information from sensors that are floating out in the ocean? Well, you should know that it's going to be very research based, statistical. You're going to be one of the scientists basically. That's data where you're sifting through it to find something unknown. Versus with a business, it's a little bit more intentional. Sure, there's aspects of it where there's feelers out and you're collecting data and you want to make sense of it, but it's when you're in a business setting, there's a business reason. Okay, you're not just sifting through the unknown as much. You have to have the business in mind, and I think to be successful, you have to be somebody that thinks about what the business is doing. You can't just think about data in your own vacuum. Oh, I like data, I want to play with data. You want to think about what is it being used for? Is that something you're interested in? Is it something that you're good at representing? Can you think about it in terms of the consumer of that information, versus just the producing side? And that is that top-down thinking. It's asking why on everything. So I think you just have to know what it's for. It's data. It comes in all different forms.
That's really good advice, and it's very, very true. Data with intention.
Yes.
I like that. Well, all right. This has been such a great conversation, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, how do people solicit your services if they would like it?
Yeah, so we have our website, of course, LeedsSource.com, and it's, by the way, the company is named after my name. Last name is Leeds, Leeds, like the city in England, but and source. So there's two S's in the middle, but it's from in Salesforce is this field LeedsSource, obviously the source of your leads prospects. So it came from that. It actually came from some heckling from training. Oh, leads like LeedsSource. Like, yeah. And then I accepted it. But anyways, LeedsSource.com. You can contact us there. That's probably the best way. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn. Anybody can feel free to reach out to me.
Oh, I love it. And we will grab both those links from you and get
Sure.
that posted on the podcast page for everybody.
Great.
Oh, I love it. All right, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good meeting you, Shannon.
Oh, likewise. And to all of our listeners out there, if you'd like to keep up to date in the latest in podcasts and the latest in data management education, you go to dataversity.net/subscribe. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Dataversity Talks, a podcast brought to you by Dataversity. Subscribe to our newsletter for podcast updates and information about our free educational webinars at dataversity.net/subscribe.